Welcome back to another episode of Health is Wealth, and thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. And as always, I am beyond grateful and thankful from the bottom of my heart to each and every one of you who is tuning in to today's episode and also tuning in to help support the podcast. As every week, we are shooting a new episode, just sharing words and thoughts of hope, inspiration, and motivation to bring value, hopefully, into your world today. So thank you once again for being here. And what I wanted to talk to you about today is learning to run towards the problem versus running away from them. And the reason I wanted to talk to you about this is because I believe a lot in life, right? When it comes to us handling difficult things, situations, decisions, and so forth, a lot of times the reason we struggle with doing so is because we have just not opened up ourselves enough to learning to deal with them, essentially, right? Learning to figure out how to analyze like problems in life and learn, to go through the emotions of it, to overcome them, to push past them, right? And so I think it's the very thing that we lack, and that's why we oftentimes struggle, perhaps making difficult decisions, being in uncomfortable situations, dealing with certain difficulties and frustrations. It's because a lot of times when there are those things, our fight or flight, right, tends to kick in, and we want to run away from problems, from conflicts of difficulties and hard decisions and all of that. It's very easy for us to do that because it's a survival tactic built within us. We don't like this thing. It makes us feel uncomfortable. We're stressing out about it. We're frustrated about it. Let's just run for the hills because that's as far away from the thing that's causing us the stress as possible. And so in hindsight, right, it makes sense. It's a very logical thing in us, built in as a survival tactic. But again, it's not going to help us when it comes to life because we are always faced with difficult decisions and situations and things of that nature. And I truly believe the more we learn to run towards these problems and just face them head on, and yeah, it's not going to be easy, it's not going to feel good, but I believe the more exposure we have to going through it, the more we just get used to it, the more we get comfortable with understanding our emotions during something, learning how to analyze and figure something out. And I believe that's where it comes down to. There's people who just seem to be able to handle situations, difficulties, circumstances a little better than others. And do I believe it's because some people are better equipped naturally to do it? No, because I think even if you're good at facing problems head on and dealing with them, it's still uncomfortable. But I just believe it comes down to, some who just allow themselves to be more exposed to it and dealing with the problems versus every time something comes up, running away from it and trying to avoid it and not deal with it at all, because it's through the repetitions, I believe, of facing things, uncomfortable situations, things that are out of your comfort zone, that they make you more comfortable being able to do it. And for myself, I try to remind myself of this all the time because, yes, again, just like anybody else, I don't like dealing with uncomfortable situations, conversations, decisions, circumstance. It doesn't feel good, but I understand that the way to grow in life is to be uncomfortable and to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so when there's adversity, when I have stresses, when I have things that overwhelm me, when I have things that take me outside of my comfort zone, I do my best now to be like, we can either try to avoid this, run away from it, or we can try to run towards it and learn from it. And that's what I always try to think of when it comes to difficult things in life, because I realize if I have the courage and brave enough to face certain problems, circumstances, situations, difficulties head on, it's only going to allow me to, to deal with it better, to understand it more, to understand, my emotions through it, to understand my thinking process, just to be more comfortable in the situation of doing the thing. And I understand that the more times I do that versus trying to avoid things, push things off, run away for whatever it may be, the more it's going to grow me to a next version of myself who can then better be equipped the next time this problem, this situation, this difficulty pops up again, right? And the more often, again, you get exposed to running towards problems, trying to figure things out versus trying to let it be somebody else's problem or trying to avoid it altogether, the more it's going to grow you into a next level version of yourself who's better to equip it physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of these different things. So if you want to grow in life, you have to, right? And I think that's the difference between people who are able to deal with difficult things in life and those who don't. It's just because those who do have just been in more circumstances and situations to where maybe instead of running into it, sometimes you find these problems and put yourself in the midst of it to figure things out. Sometimes things come at us that we have no choice but to try and figure out. But the more times I think we put ourselves in that situation to be the person who's figuring this thing out, the more it gives us the opportunity to learn, to understand, to grow, to develop, because it's going to help us bridge past these things that most people struggle with, and why most people have difficult times with dealing with frustrations and difficult situations. And it's simply just a lack of exposure to it, Because again, even with people who can seem to deal with it, it feels like more naturally. I believe it's just because they've done it more times. They've dealt with it more times, right? For me, as an example, I feel I'm really well. I do a really good job at de-escalating things at times. I've been in customer service for many, many years, where I was in customers' homes, offering, home services. And, a lot of times, if you're a technician, you understand you're a beaten back for customers. They don't like something about the service. They don't like a price. They don't like how things are going. They don't like, something a company made. You probably had no part of what it is they might be upset about. But you're always the punching bag. And a lot of times, especially in the customer's home, you're in their cage. You're in their den. You're in the, octagon ring. So you are a punching bag. And they might take things out on you, might say not so nice words. And it can be very uncomfortable situations sometimes, a lot of times you just have to understand it's not a personal thing. But the point I'm trying to make here, though, is because I've had so many of these years of dealing with humans and connecting like that in a personal, intimate space where sometimes, they were just unhappy for whatever reason. I really learned how to handle these situations. Some people might be in those situations, they take things personal or say something to make somebody more upset or whatever it was. And I believe over time, I really learned how to deal with that uncomfortable situation and problem and stress by de-escalating things, by trying to understand people, understand why they are upset, and understand they probably have a valid reason to be upset, and just trying to, bridge all these things to understand how to de-escalate stuff in order to deal with a difficult situation. And so I've had years of having to do that, and it really got me at a point to where when it comes to difficult conversations or people who are upset, I think I've done a really great job at learning how to deal with those kind of situations because of all the things I've already had to do in that environment. So I know how to keep my emotions down. I know how to separate, things from this is just a person who's upset maybe about something they didn't like. It's not me. I learned a lot of these different skills through it. So now it's like dealing with people who are upset and frustrated or whatever it could be. I feel I'm a lot better equipped in doing it just because I face these problems. I face these difficult circumstances and situations, and just got better at learning how to better manage the situation to make things go in a better direction. So that's all I'm saying here is I think a lot of people who aren't good at these things, facing difficult stuff in life, is simply just a lack of exposure. And so, you have to learn to hit these things head on because they help you figure out what it is you need to know to get better at dealing with them. And that's all it is. People who seem to, again, to handle stuff stuff a little bit better, it's not because they still don't, have these feelings of being uncomfortable or being stressed or whatever it is. But I believe a lot of it is just they've had more times dealing with it, so they expect to know what they're going to feel through it. They've learned some skills that can help them better a situation or find an option that'll, put things in the right direction or a better outcome or whatever it may be. So the point of the lesson here today is this, right? Learn to run towards the problems, not away from them. Because I believe every time you do and you level up who you are and your ability to handle stress and difficult situations, those are key components for people who level up in their lives. Because when people are trying to scale it in life and live a better life and become more successful and all these things, you're really just managing problems and dealing with problems and learning how to resolve things and move on to the next and so forth. And the only way to get better at that is to do more of that and facing difficult things in life and learning how to get better at managing them, at figuring them out, from moving on from them, from making decisions on them, from being in the uncomfortable situation and so forth. And I believe, again, it's something that everybody has the ability to do, but it just comes down to when you have a problem in your life, do you spend more time, trying to run away from it, avoid it, pretend it doesn't exist, or just stare the beast in the eye and say, I am going to slay you. I am not going to let you stop me. I am going to be stronger once I defeat you and figure out how to deal with those problems so that they level you up. So again, learn to run towards the problems and not away from them, because that's what's going to help you grow in life. As always, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode, and I will see you on the next one.